Good evening, good morning, good day, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. Our guest is Tersia du Plessis, a former devout Christian who, after 40 years, began to critically examine the foundations of her beliefs. In this journey of introspection, this led her away from religion and towards a more rational, evidence-based thinking. Today, Tersia is an activist known for her very straightforward approach. Calling a spade, she is the founder of Kruger, which is a non-profit dedicated to promoting secularism and supporting individuals in their journey away from religious belief. Tersia embodies the conviction that one's passion can indeed be a catalyst for positive change. In our conversation, we'll explore the path that brought her here, the work that she's doing with Kruger, and her insights into the impact of individual activism. Let's dive in. Good evening, Tersia. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well. I'm all sobered up. Not that I wasn't ever. I'm on a glass of cold water. So you sipping on your vape and I'm sipping on my cold water.
You got to do what you got to do, eh? Right. Tersia, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. You ever since I met you a few years ago, I've always been impressed by your dogged determination, in affecting change. But let's take a few steps back and let's just talk about your journey with religion firstly. So would you mind sharing with us just what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was it that initially prompted you to question your religious beliefs after 40 years of being a Christian?
Yes, well, the short and sweet answer, as I've heard many atheists say, is that it was the Bible and my devoutness. My experience is that many atheists say, shall we say, testify, that the more devout they were, the greater the chance is that it's the Bible that broke their faith. Because when one is devout about the Christian faith and very serious about it, then one does a lot of Bible study, and that is to study the Bible led me to begin questioning things because of the mismatch between what I believed about how to behave in the world and what other Christians believed about how to do good in the world. And there was a situation in my life where I was involved on a school board, and there was massive conflict in the way that I thought the school board should act and the other Christians who were in church with me on the school board should act. And I began to doubt myself, and I spent many hours studying the Bible. And the fact that I could pray to God and get such a different answer made me look at the Bible with new eyes, and I started reading it to find answers, to find God, to find what am I doing wrong, and it led me away from belief. I have to say that sometimes I feel bad that it took me 40 years, but then if I subtract 20, I mean, I don't suppose it's reasonable to expect a 10-year-old to see the light when you are completely 100% immersed in the faith. But I was in my 40s, late 30s, 40s before I started questioning. Although when I began questioning, it was quite a quick process for me. I think I made up my mind within weeks. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Interesting, very interesting. I'm always struck by the similarities. You can speak to so many different people, but there is a common thread of curiosity, inquisitiveness, skepticism, and all of those elements just blend into this very unique tapestry of experience that is, like I said, individual to each person, but yet you recognize the elements of the same thread interwoven into every aspect of it. It's very fascinating. So Tasha, you are known amongst your friends and those that I know for your directness. Can you share an example with us where this approach actually made a difference in your activism and had an impact? Because I don't know if you're like me, the experience I have with religion and the clergy and all these people is that they are everything but direct. Everything always comes over in a metaphor or a flowery simile. When you're looking for an answer, you get told a story to make you think and ponder and come to the conclusion yourself. But yeah, so sorry, I digress. How has this approach of calling a spade helped you?
I don't know if it has helped me.
It's your Achilles heel.
There will be those who say that it has hindered me, but I don't know any other way to be. So the interesting thing is, I am a student of literature. My highest educational qualification is an honors degree in English literature. And while I appreciate metaphor and I delight in artistic language, when it comes to living my life, I don't find that it works to live life in a metaphorical fashion, to the extent that I think I've made some enemies on Facebook. I think people have blocked me. I know for a fact that the majority of the people who went to school with me, and we were a small school, so it's quite a close group. And I think I have been banned from all the reunion groups and as such, because I just say things as they are. And I think it's not the way, I think it's just who I am, because I don't feel comfortable with not being honest. In my activism, as I say, I'm not sure whether it has earned me credit or discredit. I suppose if you're not making waves, something's not right. So I've accepted who I am at 51, and while I try to be direct, I am direct, and sometimes I do call a spade a bloody shovel, but I think it's possible to be direct without being mean. And there's a fine line, and I can be sarcastic, and there's a place for that. But in my personal interactions with people that I regard as victims of religion, I always try to be as kind and as understanding as possible. But when I interact with people like school principals who tell me that they did give the children a chance to excuse themselves from the indoctrination or the evangelists who came to visit the school, then I will be quite direct. And I'm not sure, but I hope that even my detractors and even people who disagree with me will appreciate the fact that at least you always know where you stand with me. And exactly. I've been having interactions with Samuel Edamaruku. So we interviewed him on the Free Thought Hour program 2 weeks ago. And since then, him and I have caught up behind the scenes. And he is quite a well-known Indian rationalist. He's been the chairperson of the International Rationalist Movement or organization. And he does have quite a high profile, especially in Europe. He resides in Finland. He has been there for the past 10 years. And we had a conversation yesterday, and he said something that that has stuck with me. He says, when you go to a peace negotiation, make sure that you have a working gun with you. And
it's true.
I quite like that approach. So you don't go in all guns blazing. But if you think that you're going to get anywhere without a good argument and a direct approach, then you're probably going to get clobbered. So well, one thing that I will say, you asked me how has it benefited me, or that's basically what I understood you to ask. And one thing that has happened is that my direct approach has enabled me to begin Kruisvrij, because my approach struck a chord with a funder, somebody who's sort of on Facebook and who got to know me and has seen some of the things that I've done. And he contacted me in November of last year and said, listen, I think you are an activist who might be able to get things done. I'll give you some money, begin this organization to combat religious discrimination and the dominance and arrogance of the Christian faith in South Africa. So I suppose it led to the birth of Kruisvrij.
Amazing. Yeah. I've got so many questions about Kruisvrij, and we're gonna jump into that momentarily. Before we do that, just let's just this concept of secularism in the South African context. What is your perception on that? Do you think, in theory and in law, we are technically supposed to be a secular country, like the religion, it does. It's not supposed to influence any kind of official state, because we have that, it's also you're free to practice whatever religion or none, whatever it's enshrined in the Constitution. But yet we still find all of these instances where it creeps up and it rears its ugly head. And I think it's also a remnant of that Christian entitlement, especially from, you'll see it a lot in the European circles, predominantly. I haven't really encountered too much of it in any of the other circles. I'm not saying it doesn't exist there, but it's strange how this seems to be a very unique virus that targets only a specific segment of the South African population, where in general, people are quite tolerant of religious differences. There's so many different flavors of religion in our country. Your thoughts?
So the first thing that I think is important to explain to our viewers and listeners is that although South Africa has a very liberal and secular constitution, we do not have what the United States has, for example, where there's a separation between church and state.
Right.
That makes things a little bit more complex and a little bit more fuzzy in the South African context, because South Africa comes from a very conflicted and divided past, and the preamble of our constitution and one of the chief aims was, and still is, to unify a wide diversity of people in terms of cultures, religions, history, backgrounds, everything. So now you have the situation where diversity is celebrated, but when it comes to religion, the dominant religion is Christianity, and there's this constant thread of people who believe, hello James, it's so nice, I haven't seen you in ages. I have at least one fan. Thank you, James. So that makes it very difficult. And I've actually written emails to ask constitutional experts. One of them is Professor Pierre de Vos at University of Cape Town. Sorry, that is my son leaving to fetch the young brother from a Valentine's dance. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Even constitutional experts say that it's a sticky issue, because there's the idea that the majority has more. I don't even know if it's an idea, but because Christians are the majority, they have this belief that everybody thinks like them, and there is a strong sense of entitlement. Because I don't think people understand that a secular constitution is also there to protect the rights of minorities. And what many people don't understand, or that maybe they just don't think about it. So I am a minority in two major aspects of my life. Firstly, or maybe three, I am white, which makes me a minority in South Africa. I'm Afrikaans speaking. I'm not sure that makes me a minority, but it's definitely a subgroup. And then I am an atheist. And what I always try to tell people is somewhere in your life, at some stage, you will probably be a minority regarding some aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And when we are in the majority, we tend to forget what it's like to be the minority. And that's where most Christians are. And that's one of the things that I want Kruisvrij to do, is to just prompt people to begin to think, you are probably working with somebody who is an atheist. You have probably served on a board somewhere. You have probably played sports or consulting, or you might have friends who are atheists who are so nervous of coming out as a minority group because they know that they will be treated differently. That's how human nature works. So, as far as what the position of secular people in South Africa is, we are free. I would not say that there's any open discrimination. We do not have to flee for our lives. We are safe. There's nothing that will happen to us if we declare that we're atheists. But in certain communities, there's a lot of stigma. I would say that it's a good comparison to say that in South Africa, non-religious or atheists are similar to what gay people were 40, 50 years ago in many parts of the world. And that makes it more difficult in some respects because, when there's a law and you are discriminated against, you can be a freedom fighter and you can really protest. But when the discrimination is subtle and when you it's there, but you can't prove it, that's a difficult change to make in society. So I know for many people who are, in everything they believe, in everything they say they believe, in how they live their lives, they are atheists. But in Afrikaans in particular, you just feel uncomfortable to say, I'm an atheist, because the word atheist in Afrikaans, especially, people are not comfortable saying that they are an atheist, even if they are. And I've met many people who say that they'd rather call themselves a secular humanist or a rationalist, skeptic, but to come out and say, I'm an atheist, that makes even atheists uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because it really strikes a chord with me as well. And I could never put my finger on it. I could never, because I did some introspection. The first thing I said to myself was like, why am I ashamed to admit this? Like, what is causing me this shame? Am I scared of what other people will think of me? Where does this come from? Does it come from my lifelong indoctrination in this religious community and how everything is built around it? And it took a good bit of introspection and finally putting some boundaries in place with myself. Firstly, to say, look, the type of people that I want to be around are not necessarily going to be the people who judge me on that. The people who don't want to associate with me because of what I believe, good for them, because they're not going to add any value to my life. And I think it comes with age as well, Tersia, because when I was a lot younger, I was a bleating sheep. Wherever the shepherd was running, I was like, nah, nah, leaping across the meadow, following the shepherd.
I was never a bleating sheep. Even when I was a Christian, I was always the one challenging beliefs. so I was never a bleating sheep, even as a Christian. I would have given Paul absolute nightmares. The Paul who wrote that women should not speak in church, I would have just made him. I just want to say something about the word and choices of words and labels. I hear many people who say, why should I accept a label? I don't want to be labeled. I don't want to label myself. Yeah. And I agree. Yes, I understand.
Have some courage of your convictions is what I would say, you know.
So that's my point. And that's what I would like to get people to think about. I also don't want to be labeled, but labels are useful. And when we have certain conversations, it helps to declare what your belief is by using a label. It doesn't mean that you are labeling yourself, because all labels speak to limited aspects of an individual's life. But we need labels. We can't negotiate the world without labels. And even if you say, I won't accept a label, you are labeling yourself.
You are accepting a label.
I understand the negative connotation. I do. Because labels are often, they become stereotypes. And that is something that we need to tread very carefully for and be wary of. But I don't think we should be so averse to labels that we forget that they are useful and that they do help us to negotiate life and to have conversations. Because if I tell you that I am a Sharks supporter, so the Sharks, for the listeners who don't know, is one of the national provincial rugby teams in South Africa, and I'm a keen rugby supporter. I've just labelled myself. I enjoy rugby, and I cheer for the Sharks. They're my team, and they have lost 10 out of 10 games, but I still support them. So that's why are we comfortable to label ourselves like that, but not by saying I'm an atheist? And I think it's because we have been indoctrinated, especially in the Afrikaans community. So there is research that shows that the sound of words, regardless of their meaning, create certain impressions in people's minds. You have softer sounds and you have harsher sounds. And in Afrikaans, the word atheist, there is something harsh about the way that word sounds. And if you add another layer to that, in the community and the South Africa that I grew up in, there were three things that you should at all costs avoid being. The first was a humanist, because humanists put people at the center and God should be at the center. Okay, so you mustn't be a humanist, you mustn't be a communist, and you mustn't. And I didn't even know the term atheist, because if you were a humanist and a communist, you were by default an atheist in any case. So I don't know if I'm a communist. I do definitely have socialist leanings, but I'm definitely a humanist. I'm possibly a communist and an atheist. So, I mean, I'm all three. And I accept that.
That's the trifecta of sin for the... Yeah, I consider myself an A rugbyist.
Okay. Oh no, I'm a rugbyist. Absolutely.
We can get along, Tasha. We get along. We're good friends. We communicate regularly, even though there is this one aspect of our lives that we completely disagree upon. How does that work? You know, it's almost like people can actually have meaningful and fulfilling relationships with others, even though they don't agree 100% on everything. You know, it's funny how that works.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, gosh.
Right. In your experience, Tasha, I have to ask this question. how do you balance this? There's such a fine line, because you alluded to it earlier when you talked about having conversations with people. But how does one navigate this balance between challenging these religious beliefs and ideas that you don't necessarily agree with, and also being respectful of the individual that holds the beliefs? It's a very, very difficult question to to answer, because I'm a reactive personality type. Like, if you approach me with a reasonable argument, I will give it some thought and reply you with a reasonable response. But if you approach me with 6,000 years ago, God said poof, and then mudman ribbed woman and the snake in the garden with incest and the zoo boat and more incest, I tend to be less open to having a reasonable and nuanced conversation. It's generally just on the keyboard. But yeah, I'm very interested to hear, how do you navigate these these type of conversations?
I don't.
Good job. I feel validated.
I don't think we can. I don't think I can navigate those conversations. If the person I'm interlocuting with does not appreciate the fact that your beliefs are distinct from your identity, or if that person does not make that distinction, if the person I'm having a conversation with is of such a mindset that they've never considered the idea that they are not their beliefs, then I cannot navigate that line. And the next level is, if that person is somebody whom I respect or somebody whom I love, and it's important for me to maintain a relationship with that person for whatever the reason may be, then I will just not go there, because I cannot navigate into that person's head. I cannot convince that person that you are not your beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's how simple it is. However, if I'm being challenged and the person I'm interlocuting with is willing to have a conversation with me, even a direct one, even a confrontational conversation, and we can still walk away not being enemies, then one can navigate that. One can navigate that distinction between respect for the person while criticizing the belief. So I just want to say, I have a pet hate, and that's the expression, let's agree to disagree. Well, I hate that. No, we disagree.
It's like, that's like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Yes. The message I want to convey is that let's just agree let's just don't agree. We don't have to agree. We don't have to fight. We don't have to create animosity. We don't have to be enemies, but we don't agree. What's interesting though is, because of what I do with Gracevrij, I do have quite a lot of interaction with people telephonically. So, for example, one of our missions is to address the fact that municipalities in South Africa and schools, public schools, and organizations who should not be involved with religions or religious symbols, they erect crosses in public spaces in South Africa. It's a new thing. It wasn't like that when I was a child.
Yeah.
So, for example, at Mossel Bay, which is a prime tourist destination on the Garden Route, there's a place called Pinnacle Point. So it's of extreme archaeological importance. It's a beautiful site. And there's this massive cross right there in the public space, and it has lights all over it. It's why? So we are now trying to find out, why is that cross there? Who gave permission? Who paid for it? Who maintains it? And why is it on public land? And there's another cross at Ozols This is in a game reserve. It's a 16-foot cross. It's this monstrosity of a steel structure. And we are challenging what was the public participation process. What is it doing there? I'm not saying we are going to take it down, but it shouldn't be there. So I phoned people at Municipality, and it's such an interesting thing where the moment I ask about the cross, I can literally hear the bristles.
It's like a porcupine with all that.
I can hear it on the phone. I can hear it. And that's when that's what makes me say that I can't navigate that line between criticizing a religion. When I talk about the cross, there will be people who will be cross. Okay?
Yeah.
That's just exactly it. And I just have to hope that they don't assault me, or that has never happened. By the way, I've never had to run for my life. People have been mean and people have been quite nasty. But we have an expression in South Africa, as jy jou lyf toffie wil hou, moet jy bereid wees om gekou te word. Which means if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. That's basically.
It directly translates to if you want to present yourself as treacle, be prepared to be chewed.
That's right.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's move on to your baby, which is Kruisvrij. I mean, I was just reflecting earlier today about just a run up to the launch of this organization and all the hoops that you jumped through. And you must, first of all, congratulations on actually getting something done. I always say, if you want to get shit done, ask a woman, because a woman will get shit done. But so fill us a little bit in about the background. When was the moment that you had this idea for Kruisvrij? Was it like clouds opened and you saw the light, or was it was it a process of coming to, we should do something about it? And how does that name Kruisvrij, come into the mission of your movement?
Well, it wasn't my idea, firstly. It wasn't my idea. I've had a non-profit organization that I started in 2019 that focused on trying to teach critical thinking skills in high schools in South Africa, but then COVID hit and the schools were closed, and so that sort of didn't work. And then I got involved, but I've maintained a little bit of a presence. I was contacted by John Richards of Free Thought Productions. Initially, I was a guest on his show, and then he decided that I would make a good co-host. I think he just needed somebody to. I don't know why, but I'm grateful for that, because I've learned so much, and I've met very interesting people. So I maintained sort of a presence. I was on the Magali's podcast a few times, and I'm on Facebook, relatively active. And then one day, out of the blue, in October of last year, I got a phone call from a South African who spent a number of years in the United States and was back in the country and wanted to get something going, and thought that I would be the right person to do so. And that's where it started. So we got together and he donated a substantial amount of money. I got experts to help me to set up a non-profit company. And I want to stress this. In South Africa, it's very easy to begin a non-profit organization. Anybody can do it. Many of those organizations are scams. They just don't do anything, and it's very easy to siphon money, to be very irresponsible with the funds that one gets. We started a non-company, which is different. We are a proper company. All the company laws apply to us. We have 3 directors. I am one, Professor Isak Spangenberg, who's also with the Nuwe Hervormingsnetwerk that's celebrating their 20th year this year. He's a biblical scholar, Old Testament scholar, and then advocate H.B. Marais. He's an advocate of the Johannesburg. I haven't read his CV recently, but he's in Johannesburg and he's a member of the bar. He's also active. He was active in quite a prominent court case that involved religion in schools. We are the 3 directors at this stage. And then you said if you want to get something done, get a woman involved. So we are 3. I approached Jackie Hanke. You can find her on Jack's Music, JAX Music, satirist, brilliant musician. And I approached her and I said, look, we need an anthem. We need a song for Kruisvrij. Before the company was even registered, we had a song. And Jackie collaborated with Riku Lati, a South African artist. Yeah. And we launching the Kruisvrij music songs. There's more than one. It's a little bit of a mystery still, so wait for it. But on the 24th of February at Triggerfish in the Strand, there will be a concert, and that's where you will be introduced to the Kruisvrij anthem. So nice. Those who are here, watch that space. And then we got Lisa Richmond, whom you have also interviewed.
Yes, I remember.
Yes, Lisa has worked herself to the bone this past week to get our website up and running as we speak. It went live literally go. So you can go to www.kruisvrij.co.za. So that's the Kruisvrij story. We have a website and we plan big things. It wasn't my idea. Oh, by the way, you forget something. There's a special person whom I contacted when I had to think up a name for this organization. You might know him. Bald guy, vape, glasses.
I wonder who.
Dean is my go-to person when I need to brainstorm things like that. And so, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, you and I basically came up with the name Kruisvrij sort of together. I had some ideas, and you just gave prompts. So Kruisvrij.
It was literally it started off as a spitballing session that evolved into a brainstorming session, and then I think we left that session with I think it was 3 or 4 candidates. Yeah, and then eventually you settled on the Kruisvrij one, which
yes, Dean, it's important that I'd like to say this. So the name is very Afrikaans, Kruisvrij, which directly translated means cross free. And while that might be a problem in the future, I specifically wanted it to be Afrikaans because we focus on the Afrikaner community. And Afrikaans is the 2nd or 3rd most spoken language in South Africa. I stand corrected on my statistics there, but it is one of the most spoken languages. And our target audience is the Afrikaans-speaking community of South Africa. And the name Kruisvrij, to me, has a very strong connotation because there's this expression, it also exists in English, that you have to take up your cross, and Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. And every house has its cross. But in Afrikaans, it sounds so much nicer. There's this expression, elke huis het sy kruis. So you have that assonance in the sounds that you don't get in English. And that means that every family has something that they struggle with or some trial or tribulation. And I just love this idea that you don't need that You can be cross free. You don't need to carry a cross. You don't need to carry a burden. Life is hard in itself. Any unnecessary burden should be laid down. You don't need the burden of religion. You don't need the burden of guilt. So this idea of freedom and not having a cross to bear resonates with me, and that's why the name Kruisvrij was important. And also, I hope that it's not confrontational. There's many other names that might really get many people's hair bristling. So I'm hoping that Kruisvrij will send the message: if you want to carry it, if you want to take up your cross, do so. But keep your crosses out of public spaces. Keep your crosses in your homes, but don't bring them out into the public spaces. That's the message.
Yeah, no, I mean, the last place I want your crosses in my children's school or in my government that maps out my life, or in my bedroom. Get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. You know?
No, I do not swear. I absolutely don't swear. Look,
I recommend it, Tasha. It's cathartic. You have to. Before the year is out, we're going to get you to
lie. I don't lie and I don't swear. Or I don't swear and I don't lie. I don't know. And I do not lie. I actually try not to lie, except when I say that I don't swear.
Nice. Sorry, I completely lost my track of this interview. Or with me, the interviews always they have this organic evolution of their own. You know, we make all these plans to talk about specific things, but then we generally just end up having such a nice, authentic conversation. Let's return a little bit to this idea of Kruisvrij. Let's just talk about, what do you envision the focus of your organization to be? Are you going to focus on the opposition of religion in general, or is it more towards the imposition of religion? Where are you gonna? Are you just gonna go guns blazing for the whole thing, or are you just going to be surgical in your approaches? Which of those approaches are you going to take?
Well, that will depend on how much money we get. Let me be blunt and direct, as you said that I am. We now need the funding. The initial funding has been utilized to set up a website and to pay for the music and the song and the registration, and some legal letters have already been sent. So now we need to fund ourselves, and what we do depends on how much funding we get. So please become a member or donate. Our website, I will repeat it, it's www.kruisvrij.co.za. For now, we will focus on two areas. The first is crosses in public spaces, and we've identified the cross in the Ozols Game Reserve as our first focus. We are in the process of beginning by getting access to the records of public participation that was gone through in every time I say erecting that cross, I just have this. Okay, so in erecting this cross, how do I say that with a straight face? But in any case, so we're looking at the public participation records. We've asked.
I'm sorry, I have to throw this in there. But if you get erecting a cross is one thing, but if you get a cross erection, that's another thing. Sorry, my apologies. Continue.
So on this very sensitive topic, we had some asparagus tonight for supper, and my mom said, "Oh, whenever she sees asparagus, she thinks of this joke. There was this evangelical rally somewhere in the United States. Now, I can't do accents. My mom did the accent brilliantly. But this Billy Graham type character had 10,000 people in a stadium, and he was going, and there's the first sin I hate is lying. And when somebody lies, they should be buried with only their head sticking out so that people will know that they are a liar. And the crowd went, yay. And then he said, and the second sin that I abhor is thieving. And thieves should be buried with only their hands sticking out so that everybody knows that they are a thief. And then he said, and the third sin I abhor is fornication and adultery. And then little boy called out, that means our graveyard will look like an asparagus garden one of these days. Geez, that escalated quickly. But in any case, our focus at this moment in time is to find out about the public participation records for the erection of the cross, the 16 foot metal cross structure that was put up in a game reserve near Ozols. Our second focus area is the Mossel Bay municipality, who hosted, we're not sure, we're in the process of finding out, the Mighty Men conference last December. So we are not going out all guns blazing. We follow due process. We ask questions where we feel that questions should be asked. The interesting thing is that neither of these two municipalities have been forthcoming in supplying the information. They are making us jump through the hoops. We've had to pay the 100 Rand to fill out a PAIA form, to apply to get access to the... So
I smell a rat, Tasha.
No, let's not be suspicious. We are skeptics. We are not suspicious. The second focus at this moment in time, because we have received so many complaints over the years. So when I started Dune, I sort of took a little bit of a detour, and I changed focus to the evangelizing of children in public schools. That is a major problem in South Africa. Since the mainstream churches are no longer in control of what happens in society like it was under the apartheid regime, the mega church phenomenon, the evangelical, the fundamentalist, the very charismatic prosperity gospel type evangelism. Thank you, America. Many of them come from the United States. Many of these pastors come from the United States. Why can't you export something else to us, please?
I mean, you have to trust an African to know an opportunity when they see one. And they gave rise to lots of pastors. I'm telling you, they taught us well, my dear. They taught us well.
They were trained by Americans, so I think every American view.
Yeah, I was going to say, you remember we had. I was speaking to Katu Mukasa the other day, and the way that the evangelical movements from the West, like the American ones especially, they focus specifically, and they have missions that go specifically to African countries with the purpose of just indoctrinating and pumping Christianity into the continent of Africa. It's it's crazy. It's crazy.
So I really do think that our American viewers should pay their dues on behalf of their Christian brethren and donate money to Grace Vrij, a few dollars here and there, so that you can accept your collective guilt as white people.
What was are you selling indulgences now, Tasha?
Why can't it work for Kruisvryheid? But that is our other focus, especially when members complain to us, we act on their behalf. For example, recently it's a very prominent high school in Pretoria who they have a tradition of having a function to welcome the final year students and their parents because it's the last year of school. But this event took the form of a religious service. It was a religious service.
Right.
There was no thought given to students who happened to not want to go to church to celebrate the beginning of their final school year. And there again, I write a very friendly worded letter, and they just cold shoulder one school has answered our question. They've replied, but all the other schools, and we've written letters to 4 schools at this moment in time, all of them, they just ignore. So we have to escalate and go to the next step and then ask our lawyers to write them a letter. And we are in the process of seeing what's happening regarding that. So that for the moment will be our main focus, but for members, we plan to offer a variety of services like access to podcasts. We plan to do a podcast about the Old Testament with Professor Spangenberg. HB and I plan to do a thing about Latin and law and legal issues, especially with a little bit more of a lighter tone. For example, did you know HB loves Latin? He should have been in Latin, an academic training. But whenever we talk, we end up talking about Latin. So did you know, and I wonder how many of our viewers know, that the word testicle, yes, in Latin, the word for getuienis, come on, Dean, help me.
Witness.
Witness, the word for witness and the word for testicles is exactly the same in Latin. Because no, really.
I'm trying to think why the Romans would go there.
Because what is a man's most important body part? You know, like we have a pinky promise these days.
Yeah.
Literally, when a man this idea that you put your hand on the Bible when we swear an oath. So only yes. That's where it comes from. You would put your right hand on your testicles, and you would say, I promise you I will do this. On my balls, I promise I will do this. That was later. That became the Bible.
That's fascinating. I never knew that, It sounds like you guys are going to have a great time and a great lot of fun. And I really want to, you must put all of those links on your site so that, our viewers can also go and, consume your content and see what you guys are up to. Because it's, what I always liked and appreciated about you, Tasha, is that even though you discuss and think about very big and very serious issues, you always deliver whatever you are discussing in a very approachable and a very authentic way. So it's you never come across with the intention to deliver lofty academic speeches to impress people with your level of intellect, but I always But no, I mean, this is just, I don't know, maybe I've never seen that side of you, but you never present that, it always comes from a very authentic, and one can sense from discussing things with you that you are familiar with what you talk about. You're not the type of person that will bullshit about this. So I am super excited to consume more of that content. And I really want to wish you all all the best and good luck. The fight that you have taken on is a very noble and necessary fight to have in our context. And you know, we always when we hear the word activism, we think of Greenpeace people chaining themselves to a corporate headquarters gates, or or people doing like these big move public statement type of activisms. And there is a time and a place for that. Activism can be something as simple as standing up for your rights at work, or saying no to somebody who's trying to impose a religious sentiment on you somewhere. It comes in all shapes and sizes. I would like to encourage anybody on here just to be that stone, be that stone in the shoe of somebody that is trying to stamp all over your rights. At least you can go out knowing that you've caused someone some irritation and annoyance in the process. But it's very admirable. Won't you close us out just with your closing thoughts about activism and how important it is that we speak up, speak out, and be seen? Because in my opinion, and I'm sure you share this, the religious people see your silence as acquiescence. They see that you are silent, and they just assume that you are accepting and okay with everything. So it's important that we speak up and we resist and we put up a wall and say up to here and no further. Otherwise we're just going to be steamrolled over. Your thoughts, Tersia, in closing?
In closing, walls are important, but I prefer to build bridges. So I am at heart an educator, and something about me remains naive, which is perhaps my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. I believe that we are here for a very short time. We don't know when our time will be over. We have to make a difference, and how we do that varies. There are people who are activists for different things. Many people can't understand, why do I want to be an activist for atheism or for rationalism? I'd rather say atheism, rationalism, skepticism. It is my belief, it is my experience that if there's the single most influential idea that has the most impact in the world is the idea of religion. It's the idea of a God, and then there has to be the idea of a Satan that accompanies it, because if there's no Satan, what's the use of having a God? And I've seen the harm it does in people's lives in so many ways. And that's why I want to build a bridge to the people on the other side. And I have only two aims. I do not want to deconvert anybody, because I don't believe that I can deconvert anybody. Deconversion is a personal process that each person goes through on their own. But I may be instrumental in getting somebody to ask those first questions, to live a more free, more fulfilling life. And I can testify, I don't have testicles, but I can testify that everybody that I know who are no longer religious, especially those who were religious, testify to the fact that their lives are more free, their lives are lighter, they are happier, that they have better relationships because they are less judgmental, they have a better quality of life, and it's enriching. And that's what I want to do. And I think it's because at heart, I'm a teacher. For a long time, I didn't want to acknowledge it. I'm a teacher, and it was Malala Yousafzai who said, one teacher, one book, one pen. One person can make a difference. And the challenge is that we don't know whether we are that person who makes that difference. And that's why we have to keep on being honest, being sincere, and building a bridge and just making people aware that there's a world beyond what they've always believed. And that's what I need to do. I don't believe in free will. In my next life, I want to interview Robert Sapolsky. It's who I am, and please join us to make the world a better place. Thank you, Dean.
Amazing. More power to you, Tersia. Thank you very much, everybody. As usual, you can find everybody's links in the description of this video. There'll also be a link to the ways that you can support this channel. If you want to support this channel, please go and check out those links in the description. There are ways that you can also share this with everybody who's watching. Be safe, play safe, and go out and sin, because if you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing. That's what I always say. So don't let the good Lord die in vain. At least go and sin and make it worth it. Until next time, guys.